what up? We're gonna run one today. Okay, now, y'all know for the last few days, I've been showing y'all, like explosions and, like collapse in modern day, okay? From 10 years ago until one collapsed this year, the parking garage, right, up there in Philadelphia. Now, the reason I have chose to start doing it like this is it's a lot of individuals, just like you can't convince them that some of these structures weren't built in the time frame and the timeline that we give them. They just would not accept it no matter what I do or try to show them. They still sit there and say, well, I think it was done this way. So I say, you know what? I'm just gonna start showing modern day, okay? Now, this video we about to watch now, this wasn't from shady individuals, okay? A lot of companies is legit companies that go out and do a good job. Then you got a lot of companies that do a lot of backhand things. There's be a lot of bribery going on when you in this game. It's a real risky business when you in construction, okay? It's very, very risky, all right? One wrong mistake cannot just ruin your reputation, but, can end people's lives, okay? But this building we about to look at today, this building was built in 1980, okay? In building years, that's nothing compared to some of the buildings we have seen that they told us was built, over 100 years, okay? So what we finna do now is we're gonna take a look at this building, and this building is down in Miami, and it collapsed like 2021, a portion of it did, but they just now, a month ago, releasing what happened. So let's take a look at this building.
Well, it's been almost 5 years since the condo collapsed in Surfside. Since then, the families of the 98 people killed have been waiting for answers.
Sure have. Late this afternoon, federal engineers, they released an updated report on the technical findings of what happened. Jamie Garola has been sifting through that report and joins us live tonight with new information out of the newsroom. Hey, Jamie.
Yeah, Joanne and Roxy, there are no new answers in the report released today, but it gives more information on the timeline that led to the collapse and that it started weeks before the building fell. It was overnight, June 24th, 2021, when the South Tower collapsed, killing 98 people in Surfside.
The building had stood on this stretch of the Atlantic coast since 1981. There is no obvious cause of the collapse, such as an explosion or a storm.
According to federal government engineers investigating what happened, the collapse actually started 3 weeks before with what they call the progressive failure of two garage columns and pool deck connections. The interviews you're watching were posted by the investigating agency.
Once the first connection failed...
Now, two things. Number one, this building was built in 1981, okay? 1981. Second, this building started collapsing 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks prior to the main collapse. All right, basically, just take a sheet of paper and put some pens or some pencils holding that sheet of paper, and then put some more pencils on the middle of that paper and put another sheet of paper. Now, that very bottom floor, the pencils punch through that paper, which makes the paper start sagging, okay? Stay with me. And it's a more to the story of this once we finish watching this video. But let's jump back into it.
Were posted by the investigating agency.
Once the first connection failed, other elements of the pool deck were left to carry their loads. But they were not strong enough to handle them due to problems that stemmed from the original design and construction of the building.
According to the report, the southern pool deck edge became unseated from a supporting wall, causing a slab to sag and break away from the middle tower face. The slab break damaged two supporting connections.
When the connections between the pool deck slab and these two columns in the garage below failed, it increased the loads on neighboring connections, eventually causing them to fail as well.
The two major findings: severe and widespread deviations in the original structural design from codes and standards, as well as deviation in construction from the design drawings.
Throughout this investigation, we have kept top of mind those who were most directly impacted by the collapse of Champlain Towers South. We appreciate everyone who has helped with this work, including the survivors and the families of those who were lost. With their invaluable input, this effort will help make other buildings safer and help prevent tragedies like this from happening again.
All right, now we should point out the report also makes clear what did not cause the collapse. All things that have been alleged: vibrations from nearby construction, foundation failure, sinkholes, and storm surge effects, all of those have been ruled out as playing a part in the collapse. Live in the newsroom, Jamie Garola, NBC6 News.
Okay. Now, the Philadelphia parking garage that we covered, a couple days ago, remember I told y'all it could have been a lot worse. What I meant by that, God rest their souls, that 2-3 people did lose their life, but it could have been a lot worse. And what I meant by that was, just imagine if it was during NBA season, NFL season, or any professional sports or venue that they have in Philadelphia, and that parking garage would have, collapsed then. Okay. This building down here in Miami, it happened at the most worst time it could have happened at. This building collapsed at nighttime when people was in there asleep. Okay, they was in there asleep and, didn't have a clue what was happening, until it was too late. Now, this building had started collapsing like 3 weeks earlier. And if, you go back and do some research on it, you'll see they got photos of, I think it was some kind of service was going on. It was a guy working on a pool or something like that. But while he was working, he heard this noise, and he actually witnessed that that column pushing through that floor. That's the noise he heard. And when they, came and seen concrete on the ground, they didn't, think that none. That was 3 weeks earlier. If they would have got the engineers or inspectors or somebody out there, they would have been able to tell them, like, hey, listen, y'all got a problem. Y'all need to evacuate this building. But once again, that was a very, very high dollar residence. It even had a penthouse at the top. And this was in Miami. So I knew it wasn't cheap staying there. So, you go to the owners and tell them, like, hey, man, you need to evacuate this apartment. And you got to make probably $1.5 million worth of repairs. It's a problem. And what they do, they just ignore it until something like that happen. Now it costs you way more. The end game of this always gonna cost you more than it would have cost you if you would have just did it right. Okay. Like I said, this was a condo, and it had 96 people. 96 people. Right? But, as always, it's a more to the story. Now, to the ones that's believing that these massive buildings, massive structures we've been finding and showing on this content was built in the cowboy and Indian days in sometimes 6 to 7 months. 6 to 7 months. At one case, we seen one of them buildings built in a year, the Empire State Building. Okay. But like 7 months, 6 months, 8 months that they saying some of these buildings was built. And here it is, modern day, and we got buildings collapsing with modern day equipment. Okay. Mind you, that building was built in 1981. 1981 is when that building was built, and by 2022 it was in rubble. And what's crazy is they tried to blame everything on the reason that building collapsed. And the owners of that building, they got some very, very serious questions to answer, because the tenants, they don't know. People be renting, staying in these high-rise condos and luxury apartments that's in these buildings and don't even be knowing sometimes what kind of, harm that you are in. But them owners got some serious questions they gonna have to answer. And they try to blame it on everything. Telling them, oh, it was vibration from a nearby construction site. Oh, it was, they try to blame everything on the reason that building fell. But once again, once them investigators coming up and them federal engineers coming up, they gonna find out. Like I tell people, it's just like an airplane crashing 30,000 feet in the air, and they go get them planes out the ocean and be able to put them back together in the warehouse and tell you exactly what happened. Them federal engineers going to find out. Like I said, 96 people gone. They get out, got on from work, whatever they was doing, went in and went to sleep and never woke up. Okay, and like I keep telling people, building is just, that's the beginning. You still got to maintain that building. You still have to maintain it. Okay, when you build a building, you don't just walk off. For the life of that building, it's got to have annual inspections for that reason right there. All right. So, like I said, that was in 2021. And when that building fell, and they just coming out a month ago and, saying, how it fell down, collapsed. But, once again, if you think that the Empire State Building was built in 1 year, all you got to do now is just look at modern day construction. That's it. But anyway, y'all jump in the comments and let me know.